The world is changing extremely fast right now, in ways that can feel both exciting and overwhelming. So, how do we find balance in all of this? I'm Stephanie van Bismarck, activist, author, and digital educator. Welcome to my podcast, where each week I sit down with some of the world's best thinkers, trailblazers, and extraordinary people to find ways to help us all thrive and answer the big question, how do we manage? Today, a quick question for you. How do you feel when you hear the word AI? Curious, excited, or maybe a little anxious? According to the recent Ipsos research, 50% of people say AI makes them nervous. While excitement runs high in parts of Asia, there is still a lot of skepticism across the Western world. With so many doom-filled headlines, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But what if there is another way to look at it? What if we could get excited about AI's potential and even find ways to make it work for us in daily life? My guest today knows exactly how. Beato has been writing about technology and culture since the early days of the internet, with work featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, BuzzFeed, The Guardian, and more than 100 other outlets worldwide. He's also the co-author with LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman of the book Super Agency: What Could Possibly Go Right with Our Future in AI. I was so excited for this conversation. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. In your book Super Agency that you wrote with Reid Hoffman, who the listeners who don't know who Reid Hoffman is, he's many things. He's like an institution in Silicon Valley and he's also the co-founder of LinkedIn. But you talk about the cognitive industrial revolution. What, for everyday people, what does that exactly mean in practical terms?
Sure. Well, with the Industrial Revolution, that was really the first time that at scale you were getting energy, synthetic energy that was really portable, right? So like we had already had windmills and water mills, but synthetic energy was limited. When all of a sudden you had steam engines that you could sort of build at different scales and put anywhere, the world changed. And right now what's happening is we have synthetic intelligence coming online in ways that you can sort of deploy anywhere. The internet kind of gave us information on demand, and now AI is giving us intelligence on demand. And there's a difference there, and that's why we think this is the biggest change, technological breakthrough in 300 years since the steam engine.
I guess there's a lot of people out there who have that sense that they're sort of losing a little bit the sense of control over their futures. So how can people stay in the driver's seat in all this very fast development?
Again, once you kind of reach that assertion that, this is the biggest change in 300 years, then you are basically saying, well, yeah, there's a good chance society will change in substantive ways. And it won't happen immediately. These were gradual changes that happened in the Industrial Revolution. And that's why that's why we located or landed on agency as like the theme of our book, because it creates new opportunities, but it also creates new challenges for how you think you have and maintain control in your life, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the criticisms of AI, it's creating disinformation, it's automating jobs away, are basically oriented towards, it's taking away my agency, it's taking away my ability to make choices about how I live my life. And so what we wanted to do was explore this theme of, well, how do you design it so that not only does it preserve agency, human agency, but it enhances it?
Yeah. I mean, I love that your book also says what can possibly go right in the future of AI. I love that because everything we're hearing right now is what could possibly go wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So how does super agency in action look like?
After a decade or two of the internet and increases in hardware, in the 2010s, you started to see all these new uses of broadly what we would call AI. And that might show up as recommendations engines at YouTube or Netflix, or how Facebook curated your news feed, or how autocomplete on your phone. So these are all various uses of machine learning. And in the book, we talk about it as being the difference between AI that works on you versus AI that works for you and with you. Meaning in all those early instances of AI, even if they were something that you're like, I love that autocomplete now makes it easier for me to compose texts. You weren't saying, okay, I want to use this and this is how I want to use this. It was just like a new feature that was folded into the experience of texting, right?
Yeah.
And certainly with facial recognition or predictive policing, or if you were going for a mortgage and there was a algorithm determining, oh, you get the mortgage or you don't, you might have not even known that was happening.
Yeah.
So the big shift that happened in 2022, and it happened before ChatGPT, but that was the one that sort of got everyone's attention, was all of a sudden, for the first time, there was this tool that you could use however you wanted to use it, and you had to make a choice to use it, right? It wasn't Microsoft or Google folding it into how Docs works. It was like you had to go to chatgpt.com and say, I want to use this. And once you were there, it wasn't like you could do anything on it, but it was very open-ended. It was like all of a sudden you could use AI how you wanted to use it. And relating back to that notion of, well, this is the biggest thing since steam power. Yeah. We saw that as an incredible democratization of AI, giving people the power to say, here's how I want to use it in my life.
Privacy is one of those concerns. You put in a lot of information. It's a balance act between protecting your privacy on the one hand and then using all these tools. Where are the dangers and how do we act on that?
Again, this is also why we make a big deal in this book of saying it should be opt-in. Like you should be having the choice. Do I want to use ChatGPT? Because you might have concerns about privacy. And we've seen over the last year or so, different new open source models, smaller models that you could put on your device, other models that incorporate end-to-end encryption. So theoretically, your information is staying private. Big picture, I would say that it definitely should be the individual's choice. But then everyone should be also wondering, okay, why do I value privacy so much? And what is the value of, what some people are now calling publicy? We know that a lot of value comes from sharing data.
Yeah.
At scale. And this is going to be the next big trend with AI, though, because there's a case that you want to tell everything to your AI, right? Yeah. Because then it knows you better. Like the more AI works by having as much information as possible, it, in theory, 30 years from now, our AIs might be acting on 30 years of information it's been collecting about us. And on the one hand, that's terrifying. And on the other hand, when it works, it's like, it's so amazing that we have this capacity.
I know a lot of people who actually are okay that certain amount of data is used just for, good purposes. For example, medical research, as long as it's just not used to directly trace you.
I'm by nature a private person, and so I certainly have concerns about that. But it's also a question of why is privacy and our current feelings about privacy that changes over time. Like this concept of freedom or liberty, what does that mean? Is it this fixed state, or is it actually something that is determined by technology? So for example, in the book, we use this example of in the 1800s when a group of pioneers were traveling across America. Well, by today's standards, on one sense, we'd say, oh, what freedom they had, because there weren't all these laws constraining them in various ways, right? But at the same time, today, we have the freedom to make that journey that they made that took them 6 months and ended up there's a lot of catastrophic things that happened. We can do that in 2 days because we have cars. But with cars, we also have seat belts and speed limits and all kinds of ways that theoretically constrain our freedom, but actually we have much more freedom. And so I think privacy is similar in the sense that I don't want to say that, oh, no, well, you don't get to have privacy anymore, regardless if you want to or not. But our notions of how valuable privacy is might change, because it's like, well, I mean, privacy basically means withholding information, right? So when you are living in an information-driven society and most of value is created by sharing information, is privacy the main value that you want to be, designing for? Like the concern about privacy is that corporations will get all of your data and then use it even in the most benign way, which is to sort of influence your purchase decisions. Like the worst possible way is they somehow enforce compliance on you, or they have, it's almost like surveillance, right? But even the, less drastic thing is, oh, well, they're still, I don't really want to buy that thing, but they've positioned it in a way that preys on my vulnerabilities somehow. And so I end up buying this, or, I spend more time. That's the big knock on social media, right? Is they've programmed for engagement, and we end up wasting a lot of time because they've sort of addicted us to this series of rewards and things like that. So all of those are instances of some third party using your information against you. But if you had an AI that could look at your personal history, and again, for example, I'm buying Kindle books all the time, right? In addition to hard copy books, I buy a lot of Kindle books. And because Kindle, tracks your reading patterns and stuff, in theory, my AI could tell me, oh, no, Greg, don't buy that book. You're not going to get past page 10 because we've seen from your previous purchases on this kind of book, that's the kind of book you buy, but you don't actually read it. So don't do that. Or, any of those kind of things of like, that you could put all the data on your side, basically. So that's the what could possibly go right vision.
Is there really a future without AI?
That's a question that we could go back and ask about the internet, ask about LinkedIn, for example, ask about, I've been a freelance journalist for most of my career. I remember that period of time when I had friends that worked at the LA Times or the San Francisco Chronicle, and all of a sudden they were being asked to blog, right? And they're like, well, it was like one more thing they had to do on top of everything they were doing. And a lot of didn't want to do that. But it's sort of like, well, the journalists that leaned into blogging, a lot of them, that really enhanced their career in many ways. So there is a point where it gets so widespread that it's hard to say, well, no, I want to opt out of that. On the other hand, if it only gets widespread through individual opt-in, that means most people are actually saying, yes, this improves my experience. Like, this is a net benefit for me. I certainly wouldn't want a world where it became, top down, the government says you have to use AI now. But at the same time, we live in a world where every country is going to be making its own decisions about that. And if you were to say, if the UK said, you know what, we're going to sit this one out, that's not a viable position.
With all this stuff like misinformation out there, security threats all the time, there's a lot of fraud going on. So how would you suggest people protect themselves? What steps does each individual need to do to maneuver this kind of world in a best possible way?
Yeah, well, so again, having familiarity with how these things work, it is going to get tougher. AI voice cloning is getting pretty good and pretty accessible. Like, it's very hard to say that it can stop anyone who's going to use it for a malicious purpose. And then, so if you get a phone call from someone that sounds just like your child or your parent, and they're telling you this thing, and it's going to be hard. I have aging parents that it's getting harder for them just on the old-fashioned, sort of like, oh, I got this email from PayPal. Is it legit? And so it's going to be hard. But again, that's what I'm also saying. If you have your own AIs that have this personal history for you, and it's like, it could say, no, that email doesn't look like, they could be scanning for you, or this voice person, it says it's this person, but we can tell by looking at the metadata from whatever, or the IP address, that it's coming from a foreign country, and that's probably not your uncle,
Yeah. We like that. We like that. Absolutely.
And I'm not suggesting it's going to be easy, or that when it happens, it's all of these other uses are going to disappear. But what we are saying is that if you proceed with this notion of AI, that individuals have access to control how they see fit, then you can potentially get to this world where you are using the very same kind of things that supposedly are threatening your agency to protect your agency, because it will be able to say, well, that doesn't really fit the pattern, so we think that that's not proceed with caution.
I love that. You talk about AI doomers, gloomers, zoomers, and bloomers. Who are they all?
Okay.
Can you explain?
Well, I don't know if they're categories that we wanted to create to kind of just snapshot the main themes of the discourse as we saw it. And so the doomers, we were definitely hearing a lot from them right after the generative AI, ChatGPT, became popular, because that was the first time many people were really being exposed to AI, and also being exposed to how quickly it was improving, right? Anyway, doomers are people who believe that very quickly we're going to create an AI that is so capable that it will begin to improve itself and reach a point where we can't control it any longer. So that's one. And the question then becomes, what is its intent? Is its intent aligned with human intent? And will it eliminate us, or will it just ignore us? well, just remember the movie Her. It wasn't malevolent. AI's just ghosted humanity, right?
Yeah.
They were like, we're talking, and now we're not. We decided we're more interested in talking to each other. But basically, the doomers believe that AI represents an existential threat that could seriously compromise human existence on planet Earth.
Okay, and the gloomers?
The gloomers are people who are skeptical about AI for many more near-term harms. And that includes things like algorithmic bias and, sort of baking in bias even further. It includes copyright infringement and disinformation. They're not necessarily anti-AI, but they sort of are. They definitely want to develop with a precautionary and maybe even almost a prohibitive mindset of just sort of like, let's slow this thing down and maybe even stop it. Because the harms are too great, or in any case, and so then the Zoomers are the people who actually believe, well, we think AI is going to have incredible medical breakthroughs that might not only cure cancer but expand lifespans to 200 and solve climate change and master fusion and desalinization. So like all of a sudden, all of the resource scarcity that we face is no longer an issue. And we don't have to worry about climate change anymore. And so they're like, no breaks whatsoever, develop this technology as fast as possible, because even if it creates near-term harms, the ultimate outcome will be worth that.
Okay.
And then the bloomers are ones that are somewhere positioned between the gloomers and the Zoomers, and fundamentally believe that AI is going to be a net benefit, and we should be developing it sooner rather than later, but also that we should be, as we develop and understand where risks are and where, how you might improve processes, you do that. And so you're not averse to regulation ever. And we liken it, and that's where we put our perspective was we're bloomers.
Taking you up on that speed of development, right? I mean, there's normally, with all the stuff that is also in businesses, normally it's all about speed because the competition never sleeps. But in AI, we had different movements where they really, even big tech entrepreneurs were coming together and say, okay, hold on a second. A little bit, as much as I understand being a bloomer, it's like, hold on a second, we really have to look at this. This is potentially great, but how do you see that development? What really needs to happen? What are the buts? What is the importance of slowing down a little bit?
Well, it changes over time, and it, again, after 2023, right? What basically happened was ChatGPT came out. All of a sudden, within a week or a month, I can't remember which one it was, it had 100 million users. Google and Microsoft were suddenly saying, hey, we've got to really ramp up our development efforts. And that scared a lot of people, right? And so we had there was the pause letter. I don't remember if that was, I don't know if in Europe it got as much attention. And there were Senate hearings here this is all in basically the spring of 2023, where people were saying, slow down, slow down, slow down. And we found that somewhat ironic because for the past 5 years in the US, we'd been hearing that, big tech had created these conditions where they had monopolies and they were stifling innovation, and innovation had slowed. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh my goodness, here's this new tech, this incredibly innovative technology, the biggest innovation in 300 years. And people were saying, oh, stop the innovation as quickly as you can. And at the same time that they were saying, it's so dangerous, it's going to create this new kind of disinformation that is no one's going to be able to tell what's real. It's so unreliable, like it doesn't work. It can't even do simple math problems. So it's like, wait a minute. On the one hand, you're saying this is really a dumb technology that no one should trust. On the other hand, you're saying, oh, this is the technology that will create disinformation that's so persuasive. Like, it's terrible at everything except disinformation. It didn't really make sense. And my point that I'm really trying to get to here is that we weren't there yet. And so you didn't really need to stop the innovation. Instead, what was more useful was to give lots of people access to it, see how it's used, and continue to develop it, see where the issues are and what people wanted, and continue to develop it. Now, as we get to more and more capable models, maybe what you're talking about, like, why can't we go slower? Maybe that might happen, except for the fact that, again, this is a global thing, and there is, an argument to make, certainly, that Western democracies, we'd prefer to be the ones leading that rather than China or somewhere else where they're going to have a different take on it.
Yeah. My question is often, how to remain human? And what are the skills we have to develop more and to make us, first of all, probably, use all these tools in the right way, but also remain sort of healthy and sane within ourselves?
In terms of how we remain human, a big theme in our book is that there's, like, we often make this distinction between the humanities and technology, right? Like, what's human and what's tech. And our assertion in the book is that we're more than Homo sapiens, we're Homo techne. We are this species that is defined by our tool making, and we make tools, and then the tools make us, and then we make new tools, and like it's this kind of ongoing thing. And one of the ways that we kind of try to dramatize that or convey it in the book in terms of like, how are we going to become more human? In the Industrial Revolution, there was huge concerns, right? It was like people that felt like they had autonomy over their lives and were able to make choices, and we're not going to get that. All of a sudden, there was factories, and you went to work in a factory rather than doing something sort of more of a cottage industry at home, or at least in some small scale thing. In England, it was mostly weaving, right? And so factories were likened to prisons. And I could understand why. Like, if before you kind of worked from home and then all of a sudden you had to go somewhere and you were working in a much more routinized way, and there was someone who said, well, you've got to be here at 8 and you leave at 5, and that's definitely a loss of autonomy. But if you look in the big picture, it's like, well, in 18th century England, you had a choice of being a weaver or a farmer. In 21st century England, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs you can possibly do, right? Like, Reed only co-founded LinkedIn in 2003, so a little over 20 years ago. Half the jobs that are listed on LinkedIn, I'm saying that metaphorically, I don't really know if half the jobs, but many of the jobs that are on LinkedIn now didn't exist when Reed created LinkedIn. And it just keeps proliferating. In other words, each time we create a new technology, it actually enables humanity to express itself in more different ways, right? And we kind of think, if we design AI in the right way, that will continue that process.
When you use AI to a massive extent, we think less. And critical thinking is something that is important, even in using all these tools. So how do we balance this with keeping our brains sharp?
Well, that's why we emphasize agency, because agency is sort of that tendency or capacity to, kind of proactively say, here, not become a passive participant in your own life.
Yeah.
But to say, here's what I want to do, here's how I will do it, and then start taking action to realize those things. I think it's hard to underestimate how much human beings like to work. And so, even as we always continue to create new ways to substitute for human labor, we still find new ways to work. And
yeah, it gives us purpose, really, right? There's more to it than just everything you do. It gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you a sense of belonging. There's much more to this.
Right. So maybe we should structurally be trying to think about, well, how do you ensure that people at least have the opportunity? I think that's the big thing. You don't really want to compel people ever to say, well, here's what you do now. But you do want to give people the opportunity to make the choices that will likely have the best outcomes, given what the technological contexts are.
Yeah. And being adaptable, right? To the change, and open to learn something new all the time is something I'd say.
I think that's the key. And again, one way to think about it is if you looked back, and I guess this is one way to think about it when you're my age, because a lot of people can't look back. But I was going to say, if you want to look back and say, would I have been better off if I started using the internet in 1994? If I jumped right in when it was there, would I have been better off in 2003 when Facebook launched and I had jumped into social media? Usually, anytime that there's a new thing, the early adopters benefit from it. So it's this is the latest iteration of the new technological thing. It's easy to see reasons to resist it or to be wary of it. But, in 2040, when you're looking back, people will be saying, yeah, I should have jumped into AI in 2025, Yeah.
Yeah. What is one thing that you personally truly makes you hopeful in the world from technology? What's happening out there right now?
Well, I think it was sometime last week that Reed retweeted. There was someone on a message board, a Reddit, who had said that they'd asked ChatGPT about a jaw issue that they had, TMJ. And so they had pain in their jaw and their jaw was clicking, and they laid it out. They'd been to a number of people trying to solve it, and it didn't, whatever treatment they sought hadn't worked. And so they asked ChatGPT about it. And the person who posted this on Reddit didn't give the exact prompt or conversation. But the takeaway was that ChatGPT gave it some advice, simple advice. The person followed it and solved their problem, right? But that wasn't even that wasn't even the amazing thing. The amazing thing was then that all the people on Reddit were like, "Oh, I'm going to try that," right? And so suddenly you had dozens of other people saying, "I've had this jaw pain for 5 years, and I did this thing, and it's solved," right?
Okay.
And then Reed reposts it on LinkedIn and Twitter, and all of a sudden, other people are seeing it there and saying the same thing. Now, you're then at this point, because by now millions of people have read this and millions of people have access to ChatGPT so they can try it, you're also going to get people who are going to say, well, you could have Googled that, or, oh, that advice that ChatGPT gave, that's what any physical therapist would have told you. What it really illustrated to me is this whole concept of intelligence on demand versus information on demand. Because sure, if you'd been lucky to go to the person who that was going to be their advice to you, you may have taken it. If you had the initiative to look on Google and look through, you might not have gotten that on your first hit, and so you then go to another page and then tried it. Maybe you would have gotten it that way. But the beauty of ChatGPT in a networked world is that it brings all this information together, and it's there whenever you ask for it. This is what super agency is. It's not just when what we describe it in the book is like it's a technology that's a transformative technology that millions of people get at the same time. So it's not just that however you're using the technology is improving your life. It's that everyone else is using that technology, improving their lives, and that then has an impact on your life. ChatGPT now has 500 million weekly users and maybe closer to 1 billion.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
And many of them are getting it for free. Others are paying $20. And so it's pretty accessible, for being such a world-changing thing. And we think that's much better than like, oh, we're going to highly regulate this, so only the government has access to this thing. It's not that we're blindly optimistic, but what we do say in the book is, you can't invent the future you want only by trying to prevent the future you don't want.
That's right.
So, we're saying, what is the future we want? We can move in that direction, and that's our reason for optimism.
It's definitely challenging but also exciting times. And I think it's to remember that it is still a tool. We still need ourselves to use them and to use them in the right way. We have to learn how to use them in a safe way.
Yeah, like you said, it's a remarkable time to be alive because there are so many different technologies, and the pace of innovation and change is, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but it's certainly defining this era, right? And
So, Greg, something very human, which I ask quite a few of my guests. What do you do every day to manage your day in a better way? Do you have a ritual or something?
I don't have like super hard and fast rituals, but if I could ride my bike every day, that would be my ritual.
I love chatting with Greg Beato. His insights into how we can manage, not just survive, the pace and power of technological change were both reassuring and inspiring. It's clear that while the future holds real challenges, it also offers incredible opportunities if we stay thoughtful, adaptable, and intentional. To everyone listening, if today's conversation sparked something for you, whether a new question or a bit of hope, we'd love for you to share it. And if you want to dive deeper into Greg's work, make sure to check out Super Agency. It's a must-read for anyone looking to navigate the AI era with clarity and agency. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit follow How Do We Manage wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling inspired, leaving a quick review really helps more thoughtful listeners like you find us. We've got more incredible conversations coming your way, so stay tuned and make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss what's coming next. And remember, change is inevitable, but how we manage it is up to us.